The room smelled like casserole and candle wax, and the floral perfume my mother has worn since 1997. 22 people were in that living room. I counted them afterward, the way I count things when I need to hold on to something solid. My son was 4 months and 11 days old, 13 pounds, 2 ounces. I knew the number because I'm a pediatric ER nurse, and I weigh my son at every well visit. He had on a white onesie with a duck on it. Brianna took him out of my arms without asking. She had him for 43 seconds before her phone buzzed, and in reaching for it, she set him down on the wooden bench by the window. Hard. There was a half-second of silence before he cried that I will hear for the rest of my life. I was across the room. My mother's voice was behind me. She said, "Renata, you've always been so dramatic. Brianna didn't mean it. You act like you're the only mother in the world." 22 people heard that. Not one of them said a word. But here's what none of them knew. My husband had been standing in that doorway for the last 4 minutes, and Marcus Osei had spent 10 years in the United States Army, learning exactly when to stay quiet and exactly when to speak. Welcome back to Home of Secrets. I'm Renata Osei, 31, a pediatric ER nurse at Blanchfield Army Community Hospital, Fort Campbell. This is the story of what happened when my own family couldn't be trusted with mine. A baby on a bench, a life insurance policy I didn't know existed, and the afternoon my husband said 11 sentences in a church fellowship hall that ended a dynamic 31 years in the making. If you've ever held the family together, while the family held you responsible for everything that went wrong, stay with me. My mother came to the United States from Accra in 1989 with a nursing certificate, a suitcase, and my father, who died of a cardiac event when I was 7 and Brianna was 10. After that, my mother worked doubles at a long-term care facility in Clarksville for 6 years. She was gone before we woke up some mornings, home after we were asleep most nights. Brianna was the older one. Brianna was supposed to be in charge. I understood early that in charge and responsible were not the same thing. Brianna was 13 when he died, and she handled it by becoming the emotional center of every room she entered, loudly, consistently, with a talent for making her grief more visible than anyone else's. My mother responded the way you respond to something that frightens you. She gave it everything it asked for. If Brianna was upset, the house reorganized around Brianna's upset. I was 10. I handled it by becoming very quiet and very useful. I learned to cook real meals at 10, rice and stew, measured and timed, the way my grandmother made it. I learned to do laundry correctly at 11, to read a utility bill at 12, and flag when the numbers didn't add up. I got a 3.94 GPA through high school without anyone asking me about it once. My mother came to one school event in 4 years, Brianna's choir solo, junior year. I had a science award ceremony that same night. I walked home from it alone. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because the pattern has a shape, and if you live inside a shape long enough, you stop noticing it. I got a full merit scholarship to the nursing program at Austin P in 2012. I told my mother at dinner. She said, "That's good, Renata," and turned to ask Brianna about a job interview. Not a slam, just a pivot. I've spent 19 years learning the weight of that pivot. That was the night. Not a dramatic night. A Tuesday in March. Chicken and rice on the table. My mother turning her head away before I finished the sentence. It was not a slam. It was just a pivot. But I've spent 19 years learning the specific weight of that pivot, and it lands every single time. I kept the scholarship letter in my nightstand for 3 weeks before I put it away. It was on plain white paper, with the university seal at the top. I have it still. in a box at Fort Campbell, between Marcus's deployment letters and Caleb's first ultrasound. I did not throw it away. I've learned not to throw away evidence. I graduated in 2016, worked the pediatric ER at Vanderbilt for 2 years, then transferred to Blanchfield when Marcus got stationed at Fort Campbell. Marcus and I met at a church picnic in 2015 and married in 2017. 41 people, my mother there, Brianna as my maid of honor, because that was still the shape of the family. Now the numbers, because the numbers are the story underneath the story. In 2015, my mother's supplemental health insurance premium went up. I started covering it, $387 a month. In 2016, Brianna's car note fell behind. I picked up $412 a month. In 2017, leaving the shared family phone plan would have raised my mother and Brianna's bill by $180, so I stayed on it and covered the difference. 3 payments, 3 separate conversations, 3 years. From 2015 to 2024, 9 years. I paid $979 a month, every month. Total, $114,876. Sit with that for a second. Paid quietly, in the background, while working full-time in a pediatric ER, and then being pregnant, and then being a new mother. The humiliations during those years were not theatrical. They were the quiet kind. There was the Easter in 2018, when Marcus and I drove up for the family dinner, and my mother introduced him to her church friends as Brianna's brother-in-law, not as my husband. She corrected herself when I said something, but the correction came with a look that meant I had made things awkward. There was the call in 2020, when I told my mother I'd been promoted to charge-eligible status at Blanchfield. She said, "That's wonderful, Renata," then said, "Actually, can I call you back? Brianna is at the door." She called back 40 minutes later and did not mention the promotion again. And there was my own baby shower in January of 2024, 6 weeks before Caleb was born. My mother organized it. She was warm and proud and genuinely happy, and for a few weeks I felt like the shape of the family had shifted, like maybe the baby would recalibrate something. Brianna arrived 45 minutes late with a gift she'd clearly ordered online the night before, announcing she'd been exhausted from a work thing. My mother said, "Come sit down, sweetheart. Let me get you something to eat." I was 7 months pregnant. I'd been on my feet for 3 hours. I set down my cup of sparkling cider and smiled. I have a lot of practice smiling at the shape of things. What I didn't know then, what I wouldn't find out until Caleb was 4 months old and the shape finally cracked open, was that 2 weeks after he was born, my mother had gone to a notary. But we'll get to that. Caleb was born February 28th, 2024. 18 hours of labor. Marcus held my hand for 16 of them. April 13th, my mother's small get-together. 22 people. Casserole, candle wax. The church friends who hadn't made it to the hospital. I was holding Caleb, calm after his noon feeding, when Brianna came over. She did not say, "Can I hold him?" She did not reach out and wait. She stepped in and lifted him out of my arms with the full confidence of someone who has never been told no by anyone who mattered, and turned to show him off to a family friend by the window. She had him 43 seconds before her phone buzzed. She reached for it with her free hand, shifted Caleb to one arm to unlock the screen, and in the pivot, the fast, unthinking pivot of someone who has never had to be careful, she set him down on the wooden bench by the window. Hard, not violently. She didn't throw him, but hard, the way you set down an object when you're not thinking of it as a person. No blanket, no hand on his back. She looked at her phone instead of him. I was across the room before I decided to move. I checked him, neck, head, back, the automatic ER assessment, and said, level-voiced, "Brianna, you cannot do that. He is 4 months old." My mother said, "Renata, that's enough. You've always been so dramatic. Brianna didn't mean it. You act like you're the only mother in the world." I held Caleb against my chest and said okay, and walked to the back bedroom. I sat on the edge of my mother's bed and breathed. What I didn't know, Marcus had arrived 4 minutes earlier, come in through the side door, and had been standing in the hallway listening to every word, including my mother's. He came to the bedroom 2 minutes after I did, sat beside me, put his hand on Caleb's back, and said nothing for a long time. Then finally, "I'm going to need you to trust me on the timing of what happens next. Not today, but soon." I said okay. I trusted him. I had been trusting him for 9 years, and he had never once spent that trust incorrectly. We went back out, stayed 40 minutes, said goodbye politely. I did not look at Brianna when I said it. We drove home and didn't talk about it until Caleb was asleep. That night, I told Marcus the full numbers: $387, $412, $180, 9 years, $114,876. He listened without interrupting. Then, "And none of that is in writing." "No." "Okay. What do you want to do?" "I want to stop." Then we stop. Monday at 8:17 a.m., I logged into the family account and removed all 3 automatic payments. No call, no text. Quietly, the same way I'd started them. I opened a clean spreadsheet and reconstructed 9 years of bank statements. Every transfer, dated, categorized, totaled. $114,876. I printed it, put it in a folder, labeled it with the date and nothing else. A nurse documents. The paper trail isn't a weapon until it needs to be. Until then, it's just accurate. My mother called 11 days later about the insurance payment not processing. I said I was doing a budget review and would be in touch. She said, "Renata, that premium is due on the 1st, I said. "I understand." She called again 3 days after. I let it go to voicemail. "Renata, I don't know what you're doing, but this isn't how family works." I saved it, added it to the folder. Brianna texted on April 28th. "Mom says you're doing something with the bills. What's going on?" I texted back, "Reviewing some things." She sent 3 more messages over the next week. I didn't reply to any of them. I wasn't angry. I was calibrated. Anger costs you precision, and I was preparing for the moment that mattered. Then, in May, I found the document. Within 2 weeks of stopping the transfers, word came back to me through my cousin Ya, who isn't strategic, but can't keep a secret, and a church friend on the prayer chain. Renata's struggling. Renata's overwhelmed with the new baby. By the 3rd week, the story had shifted. Renata's been distant since the baby. It's hard for the family. They're worried about her mental health. Nobody said anything to me directly. It all moved through intermediaries, the way it always had. My mother operated through a network of soft-voiced concern, the way generals operate through chain of command. Nothing traceable, everything effective. I opened a second folder, labeled External, and logged every piece of second-hand information: date, source, exact language. I replied to my aunt's check-in that I was doing well, and Caleb was healthy. Replied to nothing else. I didn't post, didn't correct the record. I kept the folder current and waited. The most important skill in a critical situation isn't reaction, it's assessment. In May, My mother asked me to grab the car title from her filing cabinet. Behind it was a plain white envelope from an insurance company. 8 years in an ER teaches you to read a room fast, and something about that envelope flagged. It was a beneficiary change form, notarized, dated March 14th, 2024, 14 days after Caleb was born. The policy, a $180,000 whole life policy my mother had taken out in 2012. I'd been listed as co-payer since 2018, when she said she was having trouble keeping up, and I agreed to cover half, $94 a month, 6 years. The new beneficiary wasn't me. It was Brianna, sole beneficiary, 100%. I photographed the form, put everything back exactly as I'd found it, and texted my mother that I'd left the title on the counter. Then, I sat in her driveway for 14 minutes and called Deb, my charge nurse. 31 years of nursing judgment and zero tolerance for panic. I told her everything in 8 minutes. She said, "Do you understand you've been co-paying a policy your mother changed the beneficiary on 2 weeks after your son was born?" "Yes." "Do you have a family attorney?" "Marcus has a JAG contact. Call them today." "And Renata?" "Document everything." "I already did." "Of course you did." I told Marcus that night. He sat with it, completely still, then said, "She made a decision about who gets the money when she's gone, right after our son arrived. I've been waiting to know the timing. Now I know what I'm going to say. And where." We met with Captain Yvonne Satterfield, a JAG attorney, on June 3rd, with both folders and the photographed form. She reviewed it for 19 minutes. Then, "You've been co-paying this premium for 6 years. Yes, $94 a month since 2018. I have records for every payment." She explained that co-payer status didn't confer beneficiary rights, but it created grounds for a civil claim and a relevant factual record for probate. "What do you want?" "I want it documented that I stopped paying, and why, and a letter on your letterhead in case this becomes legal later. I can prepare that." She also told me the beneficiary change itself wasn't illegal. A person can change their beneficiary any time. What it was, she said, was informative. It told a story about priorities and intentions that was useful to have on record. As we left, Marcus asked, "Is there anything preventing me from speaking about this in a public setting? Not to embarrass anyone, just to be accurate." She said, "As long as you're stating facts, no." "What setting?" "A church luncheon." "Then no. Nothing prevents you." "In the car," he told me, "my mother-in-law is being honored at her church women's luncheon in 3 weeks. I'm going to say thank you. When they open the floor, I'm going to say it accurately. My mother called 4 times over the following weeks. I answered once. 'Mom, I stopped the transfers. I'm not going to continue them.' 'Why not?' 'What did we do?' 'I'll see you at the luncheon.' Brianna texted asking if I was seriously not paying anymore. 'Correct,' I replied, and nothing further. I also moved off the family phone plan, raising their bill by $180. I didn't explain. I just stopped. The First Greater Victory Church. Women's Annual Luncheon, June 22nd, 12:30 p.m. White tablecloths, yellow roses, about 60 women and a handful of family, including Marcus, me, and Caleb in his carrier. My mother was being honored with the Community Pillar Award, given annually to a woman who has demonstrated sustained service to the congregation. The plaque was engraved. There was a slideshow. There were testimonials. My mother does real things in that church. Food drives, sitting with sick members, and I want to say that clearly, because the truth is, the truth regardless of what else is also true. The pastor gave the main remarks, then invited the floor to share. 3 women spoke, sincere, the room full of the specific warmth of people who've known each other for decades. Then the pastor said, "Does anyone else want to share a word for Sister Gloria today?" Marcus raised his hand. He stood, 6'1", holding Caleb, dressed again in his white duck onesie, and spoke without notes. He thanked Sister Gloria for raising the woman he married, then said, "I also want to be honest, because I think this community values that. Over the last 9 years, my wife has contributed $114,876 to support this family, quietly, without being asked twice. For 6 of those years, she co-paid a life insurance premium on Sister Gloria's policy. 2 weeks after our son was born, that policy's beneficiary was changed. Renata wasn't notified. She found out by accident. The room went very quiet. He said, "I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here because my wife has practiced a particular kind of invisibility for 31 years, and this room deserves to know what quiet generosity actually looks like from the inside, because it's been hearing a different story." My mother stood. "Marcus, this is a private matter," he said, still seated. "Yes, ma'am, it was, until it involved my son and a notary and a filing cabinet." Brianna, from her table. "Oh my God, this is insane." He turned to her. "Brianna, he was 4 months old, and you put him down to check your phone." She didn't. It wasn't. And the room heard her not finish the sentence. My mother sat down. I hadn't spoken. A woman across the room I didn't know caught my eye and nodded. Once. Slowly. That was all. The pastor closed in prayer. Marcus and I left before dessert. My mother followed us to the door. "Renata." I turned around. I didn't know Marcus was going to do that. "I know, Mom." Neither did I. "The policy. I was going to change it back. I was going to talk to you." "Okay. I made a mistake." I looked at her. 61. Wearing the dress from my wedding. Smaller than I'd ever seen her. "I know you did." My mother called June 24th. We met at a diner on June 29th. Her, Marcus, me, Caleb in the carrier. 2 hours. She cried, said she hadn't let herself understand what the money represented, that she'd always thought of Renata as the one who was fine. I said, "I'm not asking you to choose differently between us going forward. I'm asking you to see us the same." "I know." She restored the policy to a 50-50 split voluntarily, July 11th. I haven't resumed the transfers. Her insurance is now through the state marketplace. Brianna's car note is her own. The phone plan is separated. Nothing's been destroyed. The weight just landed where it belonged. Brianna texted July 3rd. "I know you think I don't care about Caleb. I do. I just wasn't thinking." I replied, "I know. He's fine. I'm glad he's fine. That's as far as we've gotten. Not forgiveness. Not a closed door. Where we are." Marcus's unit had a family day in August. He introduced me to his CO's wife, a woman named Patricia, a military spouse for 16 years. She looked at me and said, "Marcus talks about you like you hung the moon." I said, "He's biased." She laughed. "Yeah, but in the right direction." Deb found out through the grapevine and came to the break room. I heard Marcus stood up in the middle of a church award ceremony. He did. Good. That was the whole conversation. Deb communicates in compression the way all good nurses do. The $979 a month we'd freed up went into a HYSA for Caleb's education fund. By December, we'd added $8,811. I named the account after the number. It's January 2025 as I record this. Caleb is 11 months old, pulling himself up on the coffee table, laughing at Marcus. The scholarship letter is still in that box in our closet, between the deployment letters and the ultrasound. Never framed, never needed to be. I keep it because it's accurate. Evidence of something that happened, whether or not anyone in the room acknowledged it. My mother and I speak every week now. Not easily, not yet. But she asks about Caleb first, and then about me, and that order matters more than she knows. Brianna and I are at a distance I've stopped calling estrangement and started calling appropriate. What I want to say to you: the invisible labor is real. The transfers, the double shifts of care, the constant recalibration of your own needs, so the room can function. It has a dollar value and a cost that doesn't show up on a bank statement. You are not dramatic for naming it. You are not selfish for stopping. You are not destroying the family. You are just letting the weight sit where it belongs. Marcus stood up and said 11 sentences, and changed nothing that wasn't already true. He just made the truth audible to people who'd been choosing not to hear it. That's all any of us can do for the people we love. If you've ever held a baby tight in a room full of people who told you that you were overreacting, you already know every word of this story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you're new. These are the stories that don't get told anywhere else. I'm Renata. I'm 31. I'm a pediatric ER nurse, and I know exactly how to tell when something is wrong, even when the room is very quiet about it.